welcome to the deep dive. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring that bell icon so you never miss any of our deep dives. Today, we're going deep into forest ecosystems. It doesn't matter if you're getting ready for the UPSC exam, studying ecology, or just someone who likes a good walk in the woods. This deep dive is for you. We've got a ton of research articles and expert opinions, all about forest ecosystems, how diverse they are, how important they are, and why they matter to the planet and to you.
People don't always realize that a forest is more than just a bunch of trees. It's a whole web of life. Plants, animals, fungi, microorganisms, all interacting with each other and with their environment.
It's like a big dance, isn't it? With everything playing a part, from the sunlight coming through the leaves to the fungi breaking down stuff on the forest floor.
Exactly. And each forest has its own rhythm, its own choreography. That's what makes them so diverse.
And speaking of diversity, we're looking at three main types of forest ecosystems: coniferous, temperate, and tropical rainforests. They're all unique, like they have their own personalities.
Absolutely. It's not just the trees, it's everything. The climate, the soil, the animals that live there, and these forests are all over the world. They all add to the planet's ecology.
Let's start up north, where winter really takes over. We're talking coniferous forests, also called the taiga or boreal forests. Imagine a huge snowy landscape across North America, Europe, and Asia. That's the taiga.
And the conditions are rough. Long winters, freezing temperatures. The summers are short and kind of mild. But most of the year, the ground is frozen, the wind blows like crazy, and there's not much sun.
How does anything survive there? Our sources talk about how conifers have adapted. Conifers are the main trees in these forests, like pines, firs, and spruces. They've learned some tricks to handle the cold.
Yeah, their needles help them save water, which is important when everything is frozen. And their shape helps them shed snow so their branches don't break.
And because they're evergreen, they can make energy from sunlight whenever they can, even in winter. They make the best of a bad situation.
For sure. And the animals that live there are tough, too. There aren't as many different kinds of animals, but the ones that do live there are special. Mink, silver foxes, lynx, wolves.
They have thick fur to stay warm. They're really good hunters because food is hard to find, and they can handle the cold better than anyone. Okay, so we've seen the coniferous forests. Let's head south to a place that's a little more familiar. Temperate forests. Think about those colorful autumn leaves, the seasons changing, and all those trees that lose their leaves in the fall.
Things are a little easier in the temperate zone. You've got your seasons, warm, wet summers and cold winters, but not crazy cold. And the soil is richer than in the taiga because all those leaves decompose and give nutrients back to the ground.
It's like nature's compost pile, always feeding the soil.
Mm-hmm.
And these forests aren't just huge stretches like the taiga. They're more like a patchwork quilt, right? Different kinds depending where you are.
Yeah, exactly. We've got temperate deciduous forests. Those are common in North America. Then there's temperate evergreen forests. Those are more Mediterranean. And even temperate rainforests in coastal areas. They're all different takes on the temperate theme.
Instead of those pointy needles, we've got trees with big, broad leaves, oaks, maples, beeches. Those leaves are great for catching sunlight when it's warm. But in the winter, they drop them to save energy.
It's a smart strategy, and because there are so many plants, there are more animals too than in the coniferous forests. Squirrels, bears, bats, lots of birds. It's a busy ecosystem with lots of interactions, predators and prey, animals that spread seeds, pollinators.
Okay, we've seen the coniferous forests, we've seen the temperate forests. Now get ready for something amazing. We're going to the tropical rainforests.
If you like biodiversity, tropical rainforests are the best. Imagine it's always warm, always humid, and it rains more than you can imagine.
It's like a sauna, but with monkeys and exotic birds and all kinds of insect sounds.
Exactly. The amount of life in tropical rainforests is unbelievable. It's a dream for anyone who loves nature. And there are always new things to discover.
But here's something surprising from our sources. Even though tropical rainforests are full of life, the soil itself isn't very nutritious.
It's kind of strange, right? All that rain washes away nutrients. And things decompose so quickly that the plants use up the nutrients right away.
So it's like a constant cycle. Life and decay, nutrients being recycled super fast.
Exactly. That's one reason why it's so important to protect tropical rainforests. They may be lush and full of life, but they're also really fragile.
Speaking of fragile, our sources talk about something really cool. The way tropical rainforests are structured in layers, like a high-rise building for plants and animals. Each level is different and has its own residence.
Okay, so picture this. You've got the emergent layer, the tallest trees reaching for the sun, competing with each other. Then there's the canopy, a thick layer of leaves. That's where most things happen, monkeys swinging, birds flying around. Then you've got the understory. It's shady there, smaller trees and shrubs. Insects and amphibians like it there. And finally, you have the forest floor, where things decompose and new life starts.
So each layer is like its own little ecosystem with different creatures adapted to that specific place. How much sunlight there is, how humid it is.
Exactly. That's what makes tropical rainforests so diverse. Every little bit of it is full of life, and every species has its own part to play in this big ecological orchestra. So we've gone from those freezing taiga forests to those super lush rainforests. And I think you'll agree, every type of forest is amazing in its own way.
Totally. But let's switch gears for a second. Why is it so important to understand forest ecosystems? And I don't just mean for ecologists or people studying for the UPSC. I mean for everyone.
It's all about something called ecosystem services, the things that we as humans get from nature. And forests are like the superstars when it comes to providing those services.
Okay, tell me more. What kind of services are we talking about?
Well, first of all, forests are carbon sinks. They take in huge amounts of carbon dioxide from the air, which helps fight climate change.
So they're like giant air purifiers,
Yeah.
or maybe more like Earth's carbon storage units. That's pretty amazing.
Exactly. And it's not just about absorbing carbon. Forests are also crucial for regulating climate. They release water vapor, which helps make clouds and affects rainfall.
So they're not just air purifiers, they're climate moderators too,
Yeah.
keeping things cool and moist, like a natural thermostat for the whole planet.
I like that analogy. And don't forget about water purification. Forests act like giant filters, cleaning water as it flows through the ground. That's how millions of people get clean drinking water.
Wow, so forests are essential for clean air, a stable climate, and clean water. You really start to see how connected everything is
Yeah.
and how much we depend on these ecosystems.
Exactly. And we can't forget about biodiversity. We already talked about all the animals that live in forests, but it's not just about numbers. Forests provide homes, food, and places for all kinds of species to reproduce. They help keep the balance of life on Earth.
It's like each forest is a fragile tapestry, woven together with all these different species. If we lose some of those threads, the whole thing falls apart. And that could be really bad.
Exactly. And it's not just about the environment either. Forests are how millions of people make a living, from logging to tourism and everything in between.
Not to mention how important forests are to our culture. They've been inspiring art, literature, and spirituality for centuries. Think about all the myths and legends that come from forests, the sense of wonder and awe they create.
Absolutely. Forests are part of who we are as humans. Losing them would be like losing a part of ourselves.
Okay, so we know that forests are super important. But what does that mean for someone studying for the UPSC exam? Specifically, the environment and ecology part of GS3.
Well, understanding forest ecosystems is key to understanding a lot of the topics in GS3, like biodiversity conservation, climate change, and sustainable development. All those things are connected to how healthy our forests are.
So if you know about forest ecology, you can do well in the exam.
Exactly. And it's not just about memorizing facts, it's about understanding how everything is connected, from the soil to the air, and how forests help keep everything in balance.
It's about seeing the big picture, but also understanding how each tree matters.
Exactly. And that leads us to another interesting thing about forests, how resilient they are, and the threats they face in a changing world.
Okay, let's talk about that. We mentioned how trees and animals have adapted to different forest types. But what about their ability to deal with things like deforestation, pollution, and climate change?
Forests are incredibly resilient. They've been around for millions of years. They've learned to deal with natural disturbances like fires, storms, and pests. But the changes that humans are causing are happening too fast and on too large a scale. It's putting a lot of pressure on these ecosystems.
So it's like they're facing challenges they've never seen before.
Exactly. Deforestation, because of logging, agriculture, and cities, is breaking up forests, reducing biodiversity, and releasing tons of carbon into the atmosphere.
It's like we're pulling threads out of that tapestry we talked about, making the whole thing weaker. And it's not just deforestation, is it? Pollution and climate change are also playing a role.
Absolutely. Air and water pollution make trees weaker, and that makes them more vulnerable to pests and diseases. Climate change is messing with temperatures and rainfall patterns, causing more droughts, floods, and wildfires. All of that puts stress on forest ecosystems.
So we have these amazing ecosystems that give us so much, but we're pushing them too far. It's kind of scary, isn't it?
It is, but it's not all bad news. People are starting to realize how important forests are, and that we need to protect them.
What can we do? What can people, governments, and organizations do to make sure forests are healthy for future generations?
There are a lot of different approaches, like sustainable forestry practices. Those are ways to use forests for resources without harming them. And reforestation efforts, planting trees to restore damaged areas.
So it's about finding ways to live with forests
Ah,
and realizing that they're not just resources,
mm,
but essential parts of a healthy planet.
exactly. And it's not just about big projects. Individuals can make a difference too.
Like what can our listeners do in their everyday lives to help conserve forests?
Simple things like using less paper, choosing wood products that are sustainably sourced, and supporting organizations that are working to protect forests. All those things can help.
And if you're really passionate about forests, you can volunteer with local conservation groups or even have a career in forestry or environmental science.
For sure, every little bit helps. It's about understanding that we're all part of the solution.
We've covered so much in this deep dive. We've gone from the freezing taiga to the tropical rainforests, learning all about these incredible ecosystems.
We've talked about their unique features, the challenges they face, and why it's so important for all of us to understand them. Students, policymakers, really anyone who cares about our planet.
Let's do a quick recap of what we've learned. We started with the three main types of forest ecosystems: coniferous forests with their tough conifers, temperate forests known for their changing seasons and those broadleaf trees, and then the tropical rainforests bursting with biodiversity.
We talked about how each type has adapted to its environment. From those needle-shaped leaves that help conifers survive in the dry, cold taiga, to the layered structure of tropical rainforests, making the most of sunlight and supporting so much life.
And most importantly, we talked about why understanding forest ecosystems is crucial for everyone. They provide us with so much, like clean air and water, they help regulate the climate, and they support this incredible web of life.
Protecting these forests isn't just about the environment. It's about the economy, society, and ultimately about us. We're all connected, and the health of our forests is directly tied to our own well-being.
So what can you do? Well, knowledge is power, right? Keep learning, stay curious, and tell others about how important forests are. Maybe even go explore a forest near you, or support an organization that's working to protect them.
Before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with this thought. The next time you're walking through a forest, don't just see trees. See an ecosystem, a community, a vital part of what keeps us all alive.
That's a great way to put it. Thanks to all our listeners for joining us on this deep dive into the world of forest ecosystems. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you don't miss any of our future deep dives. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and stay curious.